And now for today's program. Our Travel Circle program presenter today is Keith Riley. Keith was born and raised on a dairy farm in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. He excelled in track and football in high school, earning all district honors, and was recruited by Woody Hayes at OSU. But he wanted to be an architect, so he attended college at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, where he received his architectural degree with honors. He married his college sweetheart, and together they moved to Toledo, where they became the loving parents of 2 daughters. He worked for SSOE for 30 years, rising to the head of the architectural department before retiring in 2012. He has a long list of architectural projects, and to name a few, the Toledo Zoo Rare Mammals Building, the University of Toledo Glass Bowl Stadium and Press Tower, the UT Larimer Football Athletic Building, Central Catholic High School Sullivan Basketball Center, the Scott High School renovation and Ottawa River Elementary School, and MAUMEE State Park Lodge. His hobbies include woodworking, World War II model airplanes, and he is an accomplished musician as well. I'm very happy to present to you my brother, Keith Riley, who will present today on Rocketing Through Greece.
We're going to rocket through Greece. We did this August 5th through the 15th in 2023, a year and a half ago. I'm going to go through a couple of slides really quick and talk about the tour, give you some facts and figures. The University of Toledo women's basketball team, friends and families went on this tour. It was organized. Every 4 years, the NCAA allows teams to go on foreign trips. So, and they're organized by a company called Sports Tours International, and they supply you with itineraries. They establish all the tours, all the hotels, some of the meals, tour guides, etc. In 2011, they went to Israel. The women's basketball team did. I should use my pointer here. Because Nama Shafir, one of the guards on the team, was from Israel. So they went to Israel. In 2015, they went to England and Spain because Janice Montecana and J.M. Bravo Harriet were from England, and Inma Thanagara was from Spain. So they went to Spain. In 2019, they went to Italy because Mariella Santucci was from Italy. So they went. 2023, they went to Greece. They only had one international student on the team at that time. Her name was Ella Doherty. She was from Scotland. I think the team didn't want to swim in the North Sea. They wanted to swim in the Mediterranean. So they opted to go to Greece. There was a total of 64 travelers. There was 30 team members, coaches, and UT staff, and another 30 friends and families that went along. We paid about $6,000 for the trip. That included a bunch airfare over and back, hotels, 3 different locations. We were there for 10 days, 9 nights, actually 11 days. 2 meals with the team, bus tour of Athens, 2 boat tours, one in Athens and one in Santorini. The Acropolis tour and the Acropolis Museum with a guide tour. Tour group guides. These are the 4 girls that were our tour group guides. The 2 on the left. This is Christy, and this is Kelsey. Christy was actually a team member on the team in 2004 through about 2008, and she came with us all the way from, I think, Minneapolis. Kelsey was already over there in Portugal and Spain leading another tour, and then she met us in Greece. The 2 girls on the right were both from Albania, and they spoke Albanian, Greek, and English. And they were a big help because they talked to the bus tours and tour guides and everything to get us around. And these 4 girls did everything for us, getting us everywhere. There were 2 exhibition games planned. We'll talk about them in a few minutes. That they were going to play against teams in Athens. We went to the Akrotiri archaeological site, which is on Santorini, and we had a tour with a tour guide. And then we had additional side trips, which we paid a little extra for, a wine tasting at a winery on Santorini, and a kayaking excursion along the east coast, the Athens Riviera, it's called, it's coastline. You probably can't read this, so I'm just going to fly through this pretty quickly. Day 1 and day 2, fly to Athens, relax, get settled in the hotel. Day 3, a morning bus tour and an evening exhibition game. Day 4, the Acropolis tour and museum, and then the second exhibition game that evening. Day 5, a private bus tour cruise on the Saronic Gulf, which is just a gulf off the Mediterranean, and then swimming in the Mediterranean and a buffet lunch on the boat, and then an evening free. Day 6, we flew to Santorini, got to go to the capital city. I'm going to have slides on all of this, so we'll get to this. Day 7 was another boat tour around the Santorini caldera, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Day 8 was the archaeological tour of Akrotiri, and then in the afternoon, a wine tasting tour, and then a dinner to exploring the village of Ia, and we'll have slides on all of this. Day 9 was fly back to Athens, and we went to the east coast, which is called the Riviera, and stayed at a hotel there. Day 10 was our kayaking excursion, pool time, and then that evening a team dinner, and then day 11 we flew home. I'm going to talk about the trip because this was kind of interesting. Day 1, Saturday, we all got up at noon, got to the Savage Hall, boarded a bus at 1:30 and went to Detroit, where there were 2 plane trips out of Detroit. The first trip flew to 7 hours and 10 minutes, flew to Amsterdam. They had a 4-hour layover in Amsterdam, and then they flew to Athens, arrived there on Sunday at 4 in the afternoon, settled in, etc. Second flight left at the same time, 36 members. The first flight had a lot fewer members because A, they couldn't get everybody on one plane, and B, they wanted to get the extended seating for some of the tall girls and the coaching staff. So they got a little bit better upgrade. This flight took off, same time, flew to Paris, 7 hours and 35 minutes, about the same trip, with a 2-hour layover, on to Athens, Sunday at 2 in the afternoon, actually arriving there before the first flight did. However, that flight never happened. The plane had mechanical problems, and so by the time they got it sorted out, they realized we would not make the transfer in Paris. So they scrambled and found a third flight that had 16 members they could get on, left about 8 o'clock in the evening. They flew back to Amsterdam, and then they flew on to Athens and got there about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. The rest of us, 22 members, weren't so lucky. We left Saturday at 8:30 and they flew us to Nashville. In Nashville, we stayed there for a couple hours, and then an hour, they took us to a hotel because it was 10:30 at night. So at 11:30, we finally ended up at a hotel to spend the night, to get up the next morning for a 7 o'clock flight. So we were in the hotel for about 3 to 4 hours. It's almost a waste of time. From there, we waited because a storm went through Nashville. So we stuck, and then they finally flew us to Atlanta. And at that time they told us, well, there's going to be an 8-hour layover in Atlanta. So as we waited for the plane to take off to Atlanta, which was going directly to Athens, the storm that blew through Nashville blew through Atlanta. And it was an unbelievable storm. So we were sitting in the airport, and I was looking out the window. There was a plane parked there. You could see the front of the plane. You couldn't see the tail of the plane. The rain was coming in. And lightning. And then they said, well, you've got another hour and a half wait because the plane that was supposed to take us got rerouted to Richmond, Virginia, because of the storm. So they were waiting for that plane and the flight crew to show up. At 7:30 on Sunday evening, we got on a plane to Athens, 9-hour and 35-minute flight. Now you take the additional 7-hour time difference. We landed in Athens Monday at 11:30, realizing we left Toledo Saturday at about 11:30. 2 days took us to get there. Not fun. Talk a little bit just in general terms about Greece, Albania, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, Turkey, the Ionian Sea and the Aegean Sea, and there's Gulfs. This is all part of the Mediterranean. Greece is a country of about 10.5 million people, which sounds like a lot, but it's not, because New York City in its suburbs is 8.8 million. So Athens and its suburbs is 3.2 million people. So a third of the country of Greece lives in Athens. And this is kind of the suburbs. As you can see here, there's an east and a west coast to it. So we'll keep moving here. Downtown Athens is located down here, and our hotel is kind of just off this map. And you'll see when we get into this where everything is in regards to what's downtown right now. We stayed in the Presidential Hotel, 20-story building, I think the tallest building in Athens. It had a restaurant and a pool on the 20th floor. Interesting thing about this hotel, it had 2 banks of elevators, 2 elevators each. The elevators were 6 by 6, which if you got 4 people in there with your luggage, you were friends. The other interesting thing was the elevators were 2 banks. One bank went to the even number floors, one went to the odd number floors. If you wanted to go from an even number floor to an odd number floor, you either had to walk or take the elevator down to the lobby, go across, and go back up. So, interesting. It sits in the middle of our hotel, as you can see, was right just off this map here. This is a view from the top of the building, looking out of the city of Athens. You can see it's pretty low. Buildings are all low, 5-, 6-story buildings. The reason for that is there are a lot of restrictions as to how high they can build, because they want to be able to see the Acropolis from anywhere in the city. How this building got built, I don't know. That's off in the distance. You can see the Mediterranean back off in here. And then this is actually the Peloponnesian Peninsula, which is Sparta, for anybody who's interested. But there are a few tall buildings, but not as tall as the one we were in. That evening, we went on, you could walk around the city anywhere, and you were free on a lot of evenings. And so we just took off, my sister and I just took off and started walking, and you walk down street after street after street, and they all look the same. They all have shops and cafes and bars and everything, and some of them are pretty sketchy, and some of them are pretty good. We found this one. We said, hey, let's go in here and get something to eat. So we did. We're in Greece. Let's get a euro. There's euros and euros. So we went in here and said, well, I want a lamb euro. It's Greek. And they said, well, we don't have lamb euros. Oh, okay. We have chicken and we have beef euros. Well, be safe. I'll get the chicken euro. The chicken euros have everything in them. They have chicken, they have lettuce, they have vegetables, they have French fries. It's all crammed into one big. There's some fat bald guy eating a euro. Between the 2 of us, we both got euros, we both got Cokes, and the bill was about 8 euros, or about $9. So, we were pretty happy getting out of that place. On our way back to the hotel, right across from the hotel, was a bakery, which was really a bad location for a bakery. There's that same guy trying to order one of everything in the store. But I ended up with some baklava, which was too bad for. So we're going to start on this tour our bus tour for that afternoon, which was before we got to those things. And we started in our hotel, and we went down to the Panathenaic Stadium. This was, it's called Kalimara Maro, which means beautiful marble. That's an entire stadium built out of marble. It was originally a racetrack back in 1200 BC, and it was upgraded, and in 1896 it was finalized because people through the years were stealing the marble and everything else to build other buildings. So when they had a benefactor, and there's a statue of him, I'll show in a second, who donated money to rebuild it, and in 1896 the very first modern Olympics was held here. And they had archery and some running and a lot of other things, and the athletes all entered here through tunnels and stuff to come out of the stadium. But this is all, and its seats, these is where I need my notes. It was 50,000 seats in this stadium. This is a statue of the actual benefactor. It's not some Greek guy or anything. It's the guy that donated money. Unfortunately, he's nude. This is a picture of the team standing in front of it. After we got done with that, we got back on the bus. Oh, really? Get out of the way. We went to, it's called Hadrian's Gate and the Temple of Zeus. Hadrian's Gate, the Romans, in about 200 BC through about 200 AD, had taken control of Greece, and they loved to build triumphal arches. And this is a triumphal arch. It's 60 feet tall, 40 feet wide, and wide enough for 2 chariots to go through. On the other side, there was an inscription that said, "This is the city of Athens." And on this side, the inscription said, "This is the city of Hadrianopolis," named after Hadrian, who was the emperor of Rome at that time. And it was the new Athens versus the old Athens. Well, the new Athens extended and just became Athens. So, and you can see again that the gate is oriented right towards the Acropolis in the background. And it's also aimed, as you can see down here, at this temple, which is the Temple of Zeus. This was the largest temple in Greece at the time, and is considered one of the largest temples of that time period. We'll talk a little bit about all of this here, but it was you can see it was under construction a little bit, renovation. I'm going to talk just really quickly, this is the architect in me going through Greek column orders. Doric columns about 700 BC or so, and you can take a look at them. They're very straight, they were wooden, and they had very simple column tops. About 100 to 150 years later, the Ionic column showed up, and this has this kind of scroll-like image on it. Ionic started actually in Turkey, because the western edge of Turkey is Ionia, which is where Troy was, which is where the Trojan War was. And these were fluted. They didn't do wood columns fluted, they did marble and limestone and granite. The third order is a Corinthian, about 500 BC. Not very many then. Most of these were done by the Romans, and they were, you can see that they stole pieces and parts from the other ones, as the Romans were always stealing stuff. And it has a lot of leaves, acantha leaves, and those are the 3 columns. The Doric had no base, these 2 columns both did. We'll move on. Again, you can see here, this is not my photo because I wanted to get one without the scaffolding on it, so this one I stole. But you can see the Corinthian columns and the bases, and again, in the background, the Acropolis. We got back on the bus and went to our next stop, which was the Hellenic Parliament, which is the Greek capital. And this is the Capitol building, basically, of the Greek. And it's a 3-story building, and it's hard to see, but I wanted to show this. Doric, Ionic, Corinthian. On all three, so they kind of acknowledged. While we were there, and I apologize for the beginning of this, it's a little focused. Changing of the guards. They do this every 4 hours, like clockwork, 24/7, 365. And these are traditional Greek uniforms here. And these are the two guys, there's another guy over on the other side, that are getting changed. And it takes probably about a half an hour for them to change these two guys. These are the guys that are coming to replace them. We didn't stay there for 2 hours, nor is this video 2 hours. But I wanted to show you, watch these guys. Watch this guy right here. He's going off duty. And these couple of guys that come on duty, and they have this very stylistic, ritualistic trip. Kind of fun to watch, but after about 10 minutes, you kind of go, okay, we're done. I only have this for about a minute, so don't worry about it. Go home and try to do that. It's not easy. You'll fall over. After that, we got back on the bus, and we went past a couple of buildings, the National Museum and the National Library. We didn't stop at these, but I did take some pictures out through the window of the bus. This is the University of Athens, the National University. It has about 70,000 students. They're not all here. They're spread out all over the city of Athens. Sorry, it is closer. But this was the original building where it was originally, and as you can see, let me back up here, you can see Ionian columns. Right next to it, this is more the university, right next to it was the museum, Doric columns. But we didn't stop there, but this museum outgrew it, and they built another museum somewhere else. This is houses mostly of their newspaper and magazine stuff. From there, the bus kind of looped around through the city of Athens and ended up back at our hotel. When you ride around Athens, you'll notice that most of the buildings are about this tall. And the first floor is generally all shops, cafes, restaurants, etc. If you go down the street and turn to the right, it looks like this. If you go down the street and turn to the left, it looks like this. So you get a sense that the city of Athens is a 5 or 6 story city in its entirety. But some of the buildings are gorgeous. This is an architectural picture. But wherever you drive, you always have a view of the Acropolis. So the Acropolis was a limestone outcropping in the center of the city. It's about 385 feet tall, 7 acres up at the top. In the early 1200 BC, they actually built some of the walls around it to increase the size to about 7 acres. The first construction was in about 500 to 600 BC, the first major building construction. The major buildings that we see today, or what's left of them, were done during what's called the Age of Pericles, 495 to 429 BC. Talk a little bit about this. This is the upper part of the Acropolis, and this is the lower part of the Acropolis, and these are the walls that they built around it. The upper part includes the Parthenon, the Erechtheion, the Propylaea, and the Temple of Athena Nike. And you also see a lot of foundations from other buildings that have since been torn down or used to build these buildings. And then way over here in the corner was the original Acropolis Museum that outgrew and now has been moved. Down below, there are three major structures. The Theater of Dionysus over here, the Stoa of Eumenes, which runs about 500 and some odd feet long here, and then the Theater of Herodes Atticus. We're going to have some pictures of all these. Historical time periods, really quickly, the Periclean or Golden Age of Athens was about 495 through 420. After that, you have what's called the Hellenistic and the Roman period. The Romans ended up from about 200 BC to about 2 to 300 AD. After that, the Christians took over, and the Byzantine Empire lasted from about 4 to 500 AD up through about 1100 AD. And then the Ottoman Turks took over. They actually converted the whole site to a mosque. They actually built a tower, a minaret, and they turned it into religious for them. And the Erechtheion was the harem for the governor of Athens. And then, actually about the start of the 1800s, Greece got its own independence, and through today. An interesting side fact was when, during World War II, the Nazis took over Athens, and they actually used the Acropolis as a headquarters and an ammunition storage, because they knew the Allies wouldn't bomb it. So they thought that was the safest place to be. This is a model that was in the museum showing the Parthenon, the Erechtheion, and a couple of other buildings that were Roman built that were torn down. And this is the Odeum of Herodes. They had a roof, tile roof, and the Stoa was a two-story building that ran the full length. It was for visitors. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it also had a roof. And the Romans, very conveniently, built a huge walkway up to the front. And this because the columns were wide enough to get a chariot through, so they could drive a chariot up onto the top. It was still pretty steep, so that was a heck of a ride. The Acropolis Museum itself was started in 1874, renovated in 1950, and then it outgrew that up on the top, so they acquired land down below, and in 2009 opened up a new museum. I'll talk about that again here. This is an aerial that I took offline. There is a walkway, promenade that runs from here all the way. It's about a mile. And the buses drop us off way up here. And you can walk this full way, and you can access a bunch of the lower facilities here. This is where the museum is, the Athens Museum. You'll notice that the top floor is in the same orientation and almost the same size as the Parthenon, which is right here. And then once we went to the museum, then you can walk all the way, that you can access again the lower parts. And you can walk all the way down, and then you walk up this tortuous path all the way up through the 300 and some odd feet that you walk up there, and there's some limestone, there's some marble steps, there's no handrails. It's fun. And then this is the upper part of here. This is the museum. It's a 4-story building with a basement. And the reason I say it's got a basement is because the basement of the building is actually the foundations and what's left of the city of Athens from when they were building the Acropolis. And the museum is actually setting over it, and you can look down into it. This is what's below the museum itself. And you can actually see, all sorts of stuff down here. This is the main first floor of the museum itself. This is a picture, again, this is not my picture, but they're doing excavation, and they're still finding stuff underneath the museum, but the museum was built over this so that they could continue the excavation. When you go into the first floor, this doesn't show it very well, but the floor has a lot of glass flooring, so you can look down through the floor and see what's down below you. Some of it is transparent, and then when you go up these stairs, you go up to the second level, and we're going to talk about this, the pediment from the Acropolis. There's looking down through the glass. Second floor is all monuments and statues. My sister was taking a picture, and one of the docents came up and said, "You can't take pictures here," so we don't have any pictures here. When you get up to the fourth floor, you're actually, this is, let me back up here. These columns represent the same number of columns in the same location as the columns on the Parthenon. And there is a frieze it's called, it's on the outside that depicts all the acts of the gods that was up on, and we'll talk about that on the Parthenon. And then the inner frieze is all the battles and stuff that the Athenians won in the Trojan War and the Peloponnesian and the Marathon, etc. I got it cranked. But you can also turn around and look out through the glass and see the actual Acropolis across the way. The east and the west pediment depicted some things that the Greeks were. The east pediment depicts Zeus and his daughter Athena, his wife Hera, and other lesser gods. The west pediment is Athena battling Poseidon, who was Zeus's brother, for the patronage of the city of Athens. She won. And to her left is Nike, her charioteer, and to his right is, or to his left, our right, was Aphrodite, which was his charioteer. This was a model. The interesting thing about this was these statues that were on the Parthenon, these are interpretations because they're all gone. Most of the stuff is gone. But these statues and these sculptures were done three-dimensionally, so the back side is carved as well, which no one could see. Again, this is Zeus and Athena, his daughter, and this is Athena battling Poseidon. This is a picture looking up. Here, I've got it printed. This is the Theater of Dionysus. This sat 12,000 people. It was built very early in 12 to 1300 BC. Had the original first luxury seating. These seats, you can kind of see them along here. Ran all the way around. There were 67 of them. They all had names on them, so that if you were so-and-so and such and such, that was your seat. And a lot of this has been robbed and taken away to build other buildings. So it went up, way up to the hill. The Stoa of Eumenes was built for guests to get out of the weather. This is the back wall of the actual Stoa. The wall came all the way out to here. It was a 2-story building with a roof, and it went from the theater to the theater. This is the Odia of Herodes Atticus. This seats about 6,000. If any of you have are Yanni fans and have the Live at the Acropolis CD, this is where he performed. And this had a roof on it. This is the tortuous trip up to the top of the Acropolis. This is the Propylaea, which is the entry gate, basically, to the city, to the Acropolis. This is looking back at it. This is the temple of Athena Nike. Athena was patron saint or patron of, and Nike was her kind of cousin. Athena was the goddess of war, arts and crafts, and theater. Nike was the goddess of victory. So if you're wearing Nike sneakers, you have victory in your sneakers. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is a kind of a cutaway of what the Parthenon looked like. It had an inner set of columns. This is where that frieze where the gods, and then there was an inner one here that ran around that had the victories. And in the center was about a 60 to 70 foot tall statue of the goddess Athena, long gone. And the roof was a wood roof, cedar with tiles, also long gone. This is the Parthenon. It's under construction when we were there. If you look over here, you can kind of see some of the repairs. The light stuff is the repairs. The dark stuff is the original. The Erection and the caryatid porch, talk about that in a minute. Again, this is the backside. In the city wars during the 12 and 1300s AD, the people that controlled Athens at that time used this building as, again, an ammunition storage, and the Venetians were attacking, and they lobbed a mortar over it and exploded and pretty much blew this building to pieces. So they've been slowly putting it back together.
When was that?
Probably in like 1300. Don't know the exact dates. Give you a sense of scale, this is the Erection. These are an earlier temple, the foundations for it. City of Athens in the background here. The Propylaea, the entry, and then the Temple of Nike is kind of hidden. And this will give you a true sense of the size of the Acropolis. And it's a big building. Intended to. And very windy up there. The Erection was a smaller, again, it was another monument to Athena and the governor or the emperor at that time of Greece, who was Erechtheus. And then there was this is called the caryatid porch. There were 6 maidens that represented virgins that were captured during one of the battles. I don't know which one. None of these are original, they're all copies. 5 of the 6 are down in the museum, down at the base. The 6th one is in the British Museum, and they won't give it back. And this is the other end of the Erection. That evening, we went and played a basketball game. I got to really get cranking here. I'm going to talk for another hour. We played against Greek universities. Don't have university teams. They have what's called club teams. And this was not club season, so they kind of put together a group of girls, and they were all the way from a couple of high school kids to a couple of college level kids, and that lady right there was 32 years old. She was semi-pro. And then the team played. It was kind of in a glorified YMCA gym. And the referees didn't understand that if you got fouled, you blew a whistle. They just let the game go. We ended up beating them 73-37. The first game, the exhibition game, was supposed to be the night before, but because we got in so late on Monday, they actually canceled that game. So we only had the one exhibition game. The next day, we went down to Piraeus and got on a boat, 2 boats, and went out to sea. This was the other boat, and our captain was a pretty funny guy. He put this over the PA system. I don't know if you could hear it. He put on the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack. We went out to an island and we stopped at an island. That's going to just keep playing the sound. And they allowed us to, they said, we're going to be here for an hour and a half, go swim. This is Hannah Novorosky, one of the centers, doing a cannonball into the Mediterranean. We all got to swim out there, and the water was incredible. Ming, this is not a whale. I know you were looking for a whale. That's me enjoying the fact that I don't have to tread water. I can just float. It was incredible. From there, we went a little farther and then anchored again and had lunch and taking pictures on the boats. They had a buffet lunch on the boats, which was really nice. Then from there, we went to the Scala, which is a town on an island, and the island, all around the island, these are people's residences around the island. These are all homes. And when you pull in, you see this church. In Greece, churches all have blue roofs. So, beautiful church. We walked over and walked around the church. Didn't go in it because I thought it would be a little sacrilegious, and then I found out it was a museum, not an actual church. Too late. And then we went back to Piraeus. And again, this is the Greek coastline suburb of Greece called Piraeus. And again, 4, 5, 6-story buildings tops. The next day, we boarded 2 planes to the island of Santorini. This is the girls getting on one plane, we got on another plane. And we flew from here to the island of Thera, which is Santorini. It was originally called Thera. When the Byzantine, when the Christians were taking over, they decided to call it after a saint, and they call it Santorini. And it's stuck since then. Santorini was an island about that big. And then in 1600 BC, it was the top of a volcano. And the volcano blew up and took that part of the island away and opened up one whole side, and the Mediterranean flowed in. I'm not going to skip through some of this. The island was originally formed in 560,000 BC, way before anybody was around. And it was populated by the Minoan civilization, which flourished from Crete, and it was an incredible port. And pre-1600, it thrived, favorable trade. Then 1600, the largest volcanic explosion in recorded human history happened, which blew the top of the mountain off. And this was the original mountain. The top of the mountain blew away, gone. And then the ocean flowed in, and then these little islands you see in the middle here were formed from successive volcanic eruptions, about 7 to 9 of them, the last one being in 1950. This was also, some say it was the start of the whole Atlantis mystique, because when that island blew up, it sent a 30 to 35 foot tidal wave across the entire Mediterranean. Our first day there, we were there late in the afternoon, so we got a bus trip over to this capital, the capital of the thing called Fira. I want you to remember this town, OIA, OI in Greek is pronounced E, so it's Ia, and Fira, and then Akrotiri, which was the original town for the whole island. This is the caldera. This is the inside of the volcano, basically, which when a volcano explodes, the center, there's normally a dome that collapses, and that's what happened. It collapsed and the water flowed in. But the island, the towns hang on these cliffs, and this is Fira, the capital. Beautiful. The way you get from the bottom up to the top is by cable cars, or you can walk, or you can ride donkeys. But this is the town, and it hangs on these cliffs that overlook. And off in the distance, that's Ia, way off in the distance here. This is the temple, or the Church of Three Bells. It's in Fira. This is an island in the center. This kind of gives you a scale of the caldera that was blown away. So you can kind of get a sense. So there's another picture I'll show you. You walk through Fira, and it's just this. There's no public transport, or there's no cars or trucks. You just walk through. And you just walk. And you walk. And it's a maze. And if you get lost, good luck. The next day, we went to the Athianos port to go on another boat tour. This is how you get down from up above down to the port, down below. That's a road, and it's exactly 2 buses wide, not 2.5 buses wide, 2 buses wide. So if you're on the side that's towards the water, you're looking straight down. And if you were my sister, you were like this. This is down at the port looking up, and just for a sense of scale, that's a bus, that little box way up there. That's a bus coming down. Coming down to below. We got on another boat. There was 2 boats. The girls team got on a boat, and they went their own way. We got on a boat and went to the first island, Nia Kameni, which means new build. It's all lava and asphaltic ash. You can just see it. And they said, we're going to be here for an hour and a half. You can climb up to the top. And I said, oh, great. So that's the top right there. There's a flag up there. And I said, oh, great, I'm going up to the top. Chris said, I'm not. When I got up to the flag, I was right there. And then it dipped down and went back up to another peak area. I said, well, I'll go up there, which was like right there. And then I said, oh my God, there's another, you gotta go up higher. I said, if I get to this next one and that's not the top, I'm done. But this is walking up. You can see it's all gravel and ash. Walking up. This was the top. Finally got to the top. And it's basically 460 feet up there. So basically in 45 minutes, I walked 35 flights upstairs. Got back to the boat and died. Then we went to the smaller island, and there was a hot springs that you could get. Again, you could swim over to hot springs, which is kind of this color, although it wasn't bad. I didn't go in because I thought if I get off this boat, I'm never going to get back out. From there, we went to this town called Thuresia, on the island of Thuresia, and docked at the port down here. The only way to get from the town of Thuresia to the port of Thuresia is this guy right here. And this is all shops and restaurants and cafes. Nobody lives down here. Everybody lives up there. And this is a view. This is an air view I took off the internet. I didn't take this picture, but give you a sense of scale. Again, this is the other side of the wall of the caldera. And then from there, we went back along the coast, back to the thing. And this is a picture of Ia hanging on the cliff. And the captain's talking that we could only understand about it further what he was saying. But he was speaking English, and then he would speak, I think, another language because there was another group of people on the boat with us. Cruise ships pull in there all the time. There's 2 or 3 cruise ships. This is the port of Fira. This is Fira above us. This is a very interesting volcanic. Later eruptions, the lava would flow up through cracks in the rocks, and this is one of those flows of the volcanic rock flowing up through the cracks. And you can see them here. All of these are lava flows that flowed up through, and all the way around the caldera. You see those. The next day, we went to Akrotiri, which is the original city of the island, Thera. And you walk in, and the whole city is covered with a roof. But when the volcano exploded, it covered this city with 30 feet of ash and lava. And what you're looking at is the 3rd floor of all the buildings, not the original 1st floor. And it's an ongoing excavation here. You can just see. And these are all the 3rd story of these buildings here that we're walking around and looking down in. They put the columns, they dug them all the way down to bedrock so that they could, as they excavated, they wouldn't have to redo all the columns. So that shows you how far down it goes. This, I took a picture of this because this is a bed frame turned upside down, and this is one right side up. It turned to ash and then turned to stone. But it was an original bed frame. The interesting thing is this bed frame was a typical bed frame, and it's about 4.5 feet long. They were a lot shorter back then. But you can look and see how huge this thing just stretched forever. And you just walk around. That afternoon, we went to the Artemis Karamelligos winery, small vintage winery. In the middle of the winery, they had an olive tree. This is an olive tree. A very old olive tree. You can see the olives up in here. We went into one of their vaults kind of area and had a wine tasting. And they brought wine and cheese and breads and a couple of things. And it was a lot of fun, and we drank 3 or 4 bottles a morning. And then we got to a tour of the winery, and they have cell after cell after cell of these, which is their wine stacked up, chilling. It was very cool in there. Or they had these big barrels. They said we could take one of these home if we wanted to. And you think we could get it through customs. This is a typical vineyard. And it looks different than most vineyards you might be familiar with. That's a typical vineyard. And the reason is that these plants are very small because their main source of water is the morning dew. And the grapes grow in the middle because they're protected from the winds that flow over the island. That evening we went to the town of Ia, which was just like Fira, just walkway after walkway after walkway. We found a restaurant. These are the girls and us taking pictures. We found a restaurant, and I wanted to put this in to give you another sense of the scale of the caldera. This is off in the distance there. That's Fira, where we visited that city, which is the other side of the caldera. Way off in the distance, that's Akrotiri, way over there. This is that island in the middle. That's Fira over here. And that was a part of the island that blew away. So it's huge. And you think about what... Everybody goes to Ia in the evening for this, which is the sunset over the Mediterranean. But it takes like a half an hour, and I don't have video for a half an hour, but the sun slowly sets in the west until it's kind of gone. And then the thousands and thousands of people are standing there going, okay, now what do we do? Because you have to stand and wait for everybody in front of you to move before you can move. The next morning we had a free morning in Santorini, and then we flew from there to Athens, went bus trip over to the Riviera, went to the Dolce Riviera, which is this is the hotel we stayed at. Hell of a hotel. These are all hotel rooms up here. There was a restaurant, buffet here. These were private bungalows, a huge pool, and then another restaurant here, and tennis courts and all sorts of stuff. You could swim in the bay, etc. here. This was a view from the second floor buffet area where the breakfast buffet was to die for. And that's the Mediterranean Aegean Sea, way off in the distance there. Chris and I walked down for about a half mile down the way and found an outdoor restaurant where they serve fish, and they serve it to you by the pound. So you're kind of guessing this is what you're going to get and how much you're going to get. And they said, well, about a pound, 2 pounds would feed the two of you. We got a Greek salad in 2 pounds. And this is the fish that we got.
What kind of fish was it?
Don't know. That's the head, and that's the tail. It might have been cod, I don't remember, but it was some of the best fish I've ever had. So. The next day we were to go kayaking along the Riviera coastline, but the weather didn't cooperate, we couldn't go. So we ended up hanging by the pool, which wasn't all that bad. A huge pool. Some of the girls on the team decided they didn't want to play basketball, they wanted to play volleyball, so they went over to the volleyball court to play volleyball. Had a good time. And that evening we had a dinner, buffet dinner, that was put on again by the tour group, so we didn't have to pay for it. That's Coach Call up right there. And that's all about, and then this is the tour guide telling us what's going to happen the next day, which is our travel day. Took a bus to the Athens airport. Flight to Boston was 10 hours and 40 minutes. This is that same guy trying to stay awake for 10 hours and 40 minutes. And then we had a 5-hour and 10-minute layover in Boston. We had a 2-hour and 30-minute flight from Boston to Detroit, where we were met with a bus. And we got back to Savage Arena at 11:50 p.m. on that Tuesday night, and we got home, and we all collapsed. That's my presentation, and I'm going to stick with it.
You were there in August, right?
Yes.
What was the weather like? Was it hot?
That's interesting. A couple years ago, when we went, there was incredible fires in Greece. And that was like 2 weeks before we got there. They put the fire out. When we got there, it was only 85 degrees probably max during the day. Beautiful sea breezes, it was very comfortable. The week after we left, it bumped back up to 95, 98 degrees, so we just happened to be there during a great time. And something else I failed to mention, but beginning of February last month, there was a lot of volcanic activity off the coast of Santorini because it's on one of the fault lines that Vince talked about last week. It's on the Mediterranean fault line. They had some serious seismic activity to the west of Santorini to the point where they evacuated the entire island because they were afraid that it was going to explode again. So there's 15,000 people who live there permanently and probably another 30,000 that are tourists. What a bummer it would have been to say, that it's my vacation and we all got to evacuate. They did that at the beginning of February. They're back on the island now. It's kind of calmed down.
So with those buildings all would have had like timber with the
Most of the ancient buildings had a cedar timber roof and then tile, like a clay tile. But they stole all that stuff for other buildings and stuff, or just, it just wore out. So none of those monuments at the Acropolis or whatever have any of the roofs left. They're all gone.
Another follow-up question. In Santorini, I know you can take, as you mentioned, the cable car up or donkeys. Which did you do?
We didn't because we were already up at the top. That's for the people that are on like the cruise ships.
Yeah,
they dock.
that's where we're going to be.
Yeah. My suggestion would be pay the price and take the cable car or the donkey. Don't try and walk. It's a long hike. But we were, our hotel were up above and we were dropped off at the cities up in the upper level, so we never.
Talk about the steps.
Oh yeah, well when you get in like Fira or Ia, the walkways are anywhere from 6 feet wide to 12 feet wide, and it's up and down all over the place. And so you walk along, and all of a sudden there's a step. No handrail, no warning. It's just a step. Then you walk away, that might be 2 steps, and then you walk a little farther, that might be 3 steps down. No handrails, no warning. So you have a tendency a lot of times to be watching your feet more than you're watching what you're looking at, simply because you could end up on your face in a second. And you are up and down in those cities because they're on the side of these calderas and they're all over. So, but and there are places where you walk along. I went to a bookstore when I walked in. I was on the pathway, but the bookstore was on the caldera side, and I had to go down a whole flight of stairs to get to the front door of the building because it was 12 feet below me, right along the walkway. So. But the cities are fun to walk around, full of people, but you're not. Only in Ia did we really feel like we were crowded, simply because everybody's there to see the sunset. We kind of went, wow, yeah, I've seen sunsets. We're all here to see the sunset. It's a thing to do.
I just wanted to receive information as to the possibility of participating in for a future trip.
I don't know that for a fact because it's organized through the athletic department, and so they kind of keep their tours pretty
They keep them pretty tight, and they open it up mostly to people.
Friends and families or athletic donors that have given money to the university. Because the sports tours does basically team tours. There's tons of tours that you can go to Greece, But this with the team, and they won't be going again.
Also a UT family.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an active alumni.
Yeah, they won't be going again to another location until 27. They won't be eligible to go until 2027. So every 4 years.
You might know more about the particulars on who could go.
Yeah, it always has been open, but it always seems like it's people associated with the athletic program.
Yeah.
So
Well, they try to keep it. They don't want to have so many people. So the people.
there is a
There is a limit.
There is a maximum.
And the team's first, coaching staff second, family members of the team members is third, and then whatever's left, then they kind of open it up to, and they'll probably call super donors and then go down the list, et cetera, until they fill up.
Hey Keith, take it from Ming and Sheila, watch out for pickpockets.
Oh, yeah.